Hello again. I am Felicia. I am one of the co-captains of SV Why Not, meaning I sail this with my husband. We are a 41-foot catamaran by Seawind, and in another video, I will show you pictures and everything of the boat. But I'm here to answer questions because I always get questions or confused looks from friends and family when I tell them about what we're doing and what we're and how we're sailing. So today, or this video, I'm going to explain the ICW, and that is the Intracoastal Waterway. Now, the reason why I'm doing this because I know a lot of people they kind of say they know what I'm talking about, but I can kind of I try to explain like it's the land, it's the water in between the land, and then you get out to the ocean if you're in Florida, and I try to use Fort Lauderdale as an example. Some people know what I'm talking about, other people do not. So today we're going to talk about the Intracoastal Waterway, the ICW. You're going to hear Dustin and I say that often if we're ever talking to you about sailing. So let's go ahead and pop down here, and you can open up any Google map. You can open up Google Map, whatever map program you have on your phone. And we're going to start in, let's start somewhere that you might know. So let's see. Everybody knows where Miami is. So let's start here in Miami. As you can see, there's a lot of traffic in Miami today. So I'm going to go ahead and switch over here so that you can see what I'm looking at. All right, so this is a map of Miami, or Miami, depending on how you want to say it. And to be honest, here's the ICW. So let me zoom out. So we have a map of Florida. And then if you zoom in, the water in between the mainland here on the left and the land over here to the right, this waterway in here is the Intracoastal Waterway, the ICW. And as you can see, you can take this all the way up. You can take it all the way up. Now you have to kind of maneuver through some places. There are a lot of homes in these areas, depending on where you are. Let's see if I turn my camera back on. There are a lot of homes. There are a lot of businesses. Of course, when you're down here in Florida, South Florida, Miami, you're going to run into a lot of people who have a lot of money. So there ain't no broke people living on the ICW. So this little waterway here, that is the ICW. Let me see. I have a picture of it just like on a map. So this is from somebody's blog. I'm not sure. From Yacht World. So as you can see, this is the waterway here. It goes all the way over from the Tampa side around the Florida Keys. And basically, it just hugs the coast. It hugs the coast through all these different states. And it goes into New York, and it ends right up in Syracuse. I think that's like around Syracuse in New York. So that is the ICW. That means you do not go into the ocean. The ocean is here. This is just a waterway in between land. And you could take that all the way up. So here's another spot I want to show you. So yeah, so you're just hugging this little waterway here all the way up wherever you're trying to go. You could take this little waterway all the way up wherever you're trying to go. When you're in South Florida, there are restaurants you can stop at. A lot of people have houses, and they have their little things, and you have inlets. I'll explain that later on. So let me get up here. So when we did our first trip, we went offshore from Stuart. So here's Stuart, Florida. We went out of Stuart, Florida through the river here. This is the Indian River. And then you go out of an inlet. So they call this an inlet. So this is how you get in and out to the ocean. So when you're in, and then you go out. So that is the Atlantic Ocean over there. So our very first trip, we went from Stuart up to St. Augustine, and we went offshore. So whenever we say we're offshore, that means we're over here in the Atlantic Ocean. So we went offshore up to St. Augustine. Now, when we went from St. Augustine up to Cumberland Island, we stayed inshore. And so we stayed inside of here. The dog is on the deck. Hopefully she does not fall off or anything. She probably has to go to the bathroom. So yeah, so we stayed inside here and went all the way up to Cumberland Island, which is in Georgia. So you just kind of follow this, and this is where it gets a little tricky with the ICW. Actually, you don't follow this one. You actually go to the left side. Sorry. It weaves in and out. It's a lot of back and forth. There are a lot of shallow areas. So our boat has, they call it I forget what it is, a draft of 3.8 feet, meaning we could go in 4 feet of water and we have just like 2 inches left over, which is probably pushing it. But we are light enough that we can sail in 6 feet of water, 8 feet of water, and then of course out in the ocean, which is a lot deeper. So the boat is easy to get through here, through the ICW. As you can see, we went up through Jacksonville. So we did that. So when we say we are in the ICW, this is where we are. We are just meandering through these little rivers, creeks, depending on where we are, to get to where we're going. Now, one of the issues we had with the ICW is it takes longer. That's just it. We cannot put up sails because sometimes it's this big. Sometimes it's this wide, and a lot of times it's this big. You can't really put up your sails. You don't have the best wind, and it gets shallow in a lot of areas. So we have to kind of pay attention to that. So we end up motoring, meaning the sails do not go up. We just turn the motors on, and because we are not a power boat, so we are not one of these fancy power boats that you can turn on 250 horsepower engines and just zoom. We have two 30 horsepower engines, one in one hull, one in the other. That means we are slow. We are very, very slow. We are not, like, if you're on the highway, we are not even in the slow lane. We are like basically on the other side, just trailing along. That's how slow we are. So we don't get anywhere very fast. So a trip from St. Augustine, so let's just say, actually, this is a good one. We were up in Savannah. We took the ICW from Savannah to to Hilton Head. So here we are. We went from Savannah to to Hilton Head. This is a 15-minute drive, depending on where you live in Hilton Head or Savannah. For us, that was like 4.5 hours. That's how slow we're going. So we are not, sailing is not about getting anywhere fast. So that's why everybody says you want to go offshore. A trip that would take like 2 or 3 days in the ICW can take, shorter time when you go offshore, depending on the wind, the waves, wave periods, all that kind of stuff. Now, here's the tricky part with the ICW. I'm going to switch over here. The tricky part with the ICW is that there are bridges. So we have a mast, and I'm going to pull up a photo so you can see what I'm talking about. Let me go ahead and have my things going here. We have a mast of 63 feet. Let's see if I can find, I don't know. I'm trying to go quick so I can see if I have just a photo of the boat. There's a couple of them in here. So as you can see here, and let me switch back over here. We have a mast of 63 feet. That is pretty tall. The bridges typically in the ICW are 65 feet. Once you get north, I think they get a little taller, but on average, they are 65 feet, nothing lower than that. So we have a 63-foot mast, 65-foot bridges. That is problematic And this is one of the things that I learned because, I'm thinking the ICW is just, oh, this is a little easy thing. You just get in, pop in, and go. Well, the ICW is affected by currents and tides. So either the current's going against you, which means you're using a little bit more engine power trying to go, against something that doesn't want you to go. Or you have tides, and that means we have low tide or high tide. And low tide, the water can go out from the ICW to, about 8 feet, or 8 feet can come in. Now, here's the tricky part about the ICW. We have to time bridges based on tides. Unfortunately, I don't have any good photos to show you of what we have to look for when we're going under the bridge because I'm just way too stressed when we're going under a bridge, so I have to like really pay attention. We have to communicate a lot. You only get about this much space to go under the bridge on either side, so I have to call out, or Dustin has to call out how much space we have on the sides while we're going under them. But going back to the bridge height, if the tide is too high, we cannot go under the bridge because the tide can, like I said, if it goes up 8 feet, depending on what the depth is at that time, we just can't go under the bridge because they have this little sign on the side. And if it says like 65, that is a no-go for us. That means we would literally hit the top of a bridge. So we have to wait until low tide. The best time is at low tide when there's a little sign that says like 62. We want that to be low as possible. But if you're trying to get anywhere fast, and remember, we don't go very fast. We have a mast. We are not a power boat. It can slow us down because the tide can change every 4 hours to every 6 hours. And so we have to pay attention to that. So if we are going somewhere that has 3 bridges, we have to basically time it almost perfectly to get under all the bridges. And one of the other issues we had recently was that there was a construction barge. So we couldn't even get under that bridge, which meant, and it was at low tide. So we didn't know when the barge would move so that we could get under it. And I'm part of an app, and a lot of people were just saying, you just go offshore because a little area that we were going to go to is too windy and too slow, too shallowy. They call it shoaling, meaning you might scrape the bottom of the boat. So I'm going to show you a video that I have that will kind of give you an idea of what we're dealing with when we go under a bridge. And I have to tell you, it is stressful. It is stressful to watch. Terrifying. It is really, really stressful. So here is us going under one of the bridges. And we have to approach it really slow. It also helps if no other boat is coming to us or behind us, because if they have a wake, meaning they leave waves, that means it makes us bounce, and then we can hit the top of the thing. Now, I think this one was right. We were right at the top, meaning our very tip, our bendable antenna was touching. So we were probably at mid tide. So we weren't at high, weren't at low. As you can see, I have to hold on while I'm recording because the perspective just kind of throws you off. But this is what we're dealing with when we are going under a bridge. It's scary. I don't know if it's scary, it's stressful. We did have one incident where we did scrape. I think it actually moved our antenna a little bit. So somebody's going to have to get in a bosun chair and go up the mast. Yes, somebody has to go up the mast to go fix it. But this is what we're dealing with when we're going under bridges. And it is not the funnest thing to do. And I did make a post inside of our Sea People app and I basically said the ICW is not our friend. And this is one of the things we've had to come to terms with. Like, it's an option when it's an option, but it really isn't an option. My mantra now is sailboats are made for sailing. We need to go sailing. And it makes things so much easier when you do that. So that's what I want to show you with that. And let's see if I can get out of this. Oh gosh, let's see. There we go. Um, so that's what we're dealing with when we're dealing with the ICW. It's stressful. So now that we are not, we only going to use the ICW if we absolutely have to. But the further south we get, it's just not a good idea. It's too crowded, too busy, too many bridges. Now, eventually, our goal is to sail up north. When you get to around this area here, this is um, Cape Hatteras, so in North Carolina. For this one, we will go inside because this area, the waves get a little unbehavable. It is very trafficky with a lot of shipping containers, lots of boats going here, and this has been a place that is a little dangerous for a lot of people. So what everybody does, they go inside. Some people sail it out. You got to have basically perfect weather. So whenever you hear about a lot of these storms that are coming through, hurricanes or anything, and they're always focusing like here in North Carolina for some reason, I don't know the history, but this seems to be like the place where it gets moody right around here. So most people just go the inside route, take the ICW, go into Norfolk, and now you're in the Chesapeake, and so you just kind of hang out here. So a lot of people just kind of hang out here, or you might go out if you want to go to this other side. So hopefully that explains a little bit more of the ICW. And oh, the last thing I will say is that we will go into the ICW when we are coming from offshore to inshore. So whenever we need to anchor, we need to get away from a storm, when we need to duck out from the ocean, we will take one of these inlets to go inside, because remember, the waves are not crazy in here. There are no waves basically. It's protected. It's land. When you have land, you're slightly more protected from all of the craziness that is out here in the ocean. So yeah, we will be using the ICW, but at this point, we're realizing it is not the most viable option for this boat, this mast, and those bridges are just stressful. So I hope this explains a little bit about the ICW. Of course, all you gotta do is pull up your Google Maps and you can follow the ICW all the way up from like Tampa, all the way around the bottom of Florida into Syracuse, New York. And of course, if you have any more questions about anything, just let me know. I'm getting into the hang of making these little videos so that I can explain what we're doing, and you won't be looking at me like I'm crazy when I tell you things. So there you go. Take care.